going to go ahead and get started with a video message from Tina Paye. She's in France right now, doing some big sustainability chats with our CEO, Justin. So she couldn't be here, but wanted to be a part of it. So without further ado, we will play the video message from Tina. Not actually for me.
Welcome to our International Women's Day celebration at RICS. Thanks to everyone who's joined us today, and it's with sincere regrets that I'm not able to be there with you in person at Great George Street on this occasion. Today, we're commemorating the achievements of women and reaffirming our commitment to gender equity and women's empowerment. We recognize the invaluable contributions of women to our organization and to the sector. Across built environment professions, women play a vital role in shaping the world around us. Personally, I've been inspired by the incredible women I've had the privilege of working with and learning from in my career. Their resilience, determination, and brilliance continue to drive positive change and transformation, not just today, but every day. As we reflect on the progress we've made, we also recognize the challenges that still lie ahead. While we celebrate the accomplishments of women in various fields, we should acknowledge the systemic barriers that continue to hinder their full participation and advancement. Just over a century since we enrolled our first woman surveyor, Irene Barkley, who you'll be hearing about, I'm sure, later on today, women are less than 1 in 5 of the membership of RICS. So is change happening? Well, don't hold your breath. Globally, women form just over a quarter of those enrolled for the APC. However, a more pressing issue is that the average length of RICS membership for women is only 16 years compared to 28 years for men. This effect can be seen in our fellows, among whom just 1 in 20 is a woman. These figures show that we cannot wait, hopefully, for change. We must work energetically to make it happen. Just as Irene Barkley and Evelyn Perry, who studied alongside her and was our second woman surveyor, did. We need to ensure the profession is more attractive to women. We need to tackle those factors that cause women to leave the profession or prevent them from returning to it. At RICS, we are committed to creating an inclusive and supportive environment where women can thrive and achieve their full potential. Today's theme, Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress, reminds us of the ripple effects when women are given the opportunity to succeed. When we invest in women, we not only lift individuals, but also strengthen families, workplaces, communities, and society at large. In order to support our members and firms in accelerating progress, we've published a suite of guidance focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. This aligns with Rule 4 of the RICS Rules of Conduct. I encourage you all to explore, learn, and implement this guidance, which has been developed and delivered by members and DEI experts in the industry. Today, we honor the trailblazers who paved the way for future generations. Let's also support the leaders who are currently shaping a more equitable and inclusive world. And above all, let's continue to build an inclusive, sustainable, and prosperous industry that positively shapes and impacts the communities we serve. Thank you.
All right. So let's getting us started. Before I introduce Tommy Labuda, she's our new membership DEI manager, and she's going to bring the house down with an amazing spoken word performance. And I can say that because I've heard it twice now, and it gets me every time. So get excited for that. But I forgot a general housekeeping item before, which I think is important, which is this is a safe space. This is an inclusive space. This is a space of respect. So when we get to Q&A sessions, please adhere to that. As we move through the event, and we'll get questions answered. All right. So from there, I'd like to introduce you to Tommy Laguda, and she's going to deliver a spoken word before we move on the agenda.
the way the world perceives, all shades and sizes, all stories of transition. Growth in mind and body, the complexities are so unknown. From the hues of our skin to the lows of how we are treated, all because of how we choose to identify. The greatness we possess, the mountains that we have climbed, but still, yet, the struggle persists. Stories untold, unknown, or whispered in silence to avoid their bias. And yes, the struggle is different depending on where you are positioned. So what is this? A call to action, a call to act, a call to defy expectations, or just another call to react? Do we stand together, collective, regardless of our gender differences? Can we be unified and accept our differences? Can we understand that diversity isn't a buzzword we tout, but it's the essence of humanity beyond any reasonable doubt? Stop sitting on the sidelines and pretending that you're not a part of this convo, because you are, bro. Can we achieve equity if we accept individuality? Because then in your head I'll share, you'll realize the stories are not too dissimilar. Being afraid to step out is reality. But to first of all, we must advance where stereotypes linger and labels emerge, was there to speak in boardrooms and meetings at tables of injustice. We are all a part of the war for inclusion, so let's dismantle this system. Lend your strength to challenge misconceptions, because beyond my words, let empathy speak. Let it be everything and every interaction we speak. Together, let's build a world where equity can thrive, where voices are heard and filled with pride. Towards a future where equality can just abide. Together, we are rewriting the script. In this book of equity, I have my chapter. Will you join me in writing yours? Thank you. I would like to continue our event and introduce our first keynote speaker, which I'm so looking forward to hearing. So I'll let Carrie do the rest of the introductions, but Carrie is a professor in real estate at law, of law at Harper Adams University. I would like to welcome her up to introduce herself and to give us our first keynote.
Lovely to see you, and it's been lovely and a surprise to see quite a few of ex-students up here, so a special welcome. I am going to read because it's quite a short slot and I have a dreadful tendency to ramble if left free form. So there we are, and I'm presuming this is the clicker. Yes, there we are, this works. So before I start, obviously thoughts about current diversity are beyond unreconstructed binary terminology, so forgive very shorthand as we go, it's not without awareness of that. And I haven't got very long, as you know, but there are three things I want to cover very briefly. Firstly, why it's important to learn about the past, the people, the institutions, and indeed our technical subject areas. It's trite to say the past explains the present and hopefully informs the future, but it's true. And effectiveness and depth is enhanced manyfold for each of us with personal and professional benefits when we understand what went before. So history's for everyone, and women's history is certainly not just for women. Of course, the main point of me being here is to say something about the first women to qualify as chartered surveyors. And today we're thinking about where we are now and persisting inequalities, as well as gender. Race, disability, class and more need addressing to achieve the equity of opportunity and the richness and value to professional life which true diversity affords. But to gender. I came to this area as a university lecturer teaching for many years, indeed decades, on aspects of law and taxation to prospective surveyors, largely on oral practice courses at Harper Adams University and to a lesser extent at the Royal Agricultural University, and lately particularly with residential valuers. From a single lecture slide on first women lawyers, I developed something of an obsession on women firsts. And there's actually an extremely long list on my website if you're interested. And that, of course, led to the first woman chartered surveyor as I was teaching on surveying courses. And I've written the Oxford Dictionary of National Biography entry on her, which is sort of my credentials, if you like, for talking about Annie Barclay. I've done several of these ODNB entries, by the way, and if you want to learn about a really wonderful and completely eccentric woman, ask me about the first agricultural advisor to the WI. But that's for another day. As you're interested in the built environment, I might also, if I may, mention my Women in Street Names project. I'm writing brief biographies of women across the UK who've had streets named after them. And it's directly on point for our interest today, that women should be a part of normal public representation, whether in streets, statues, blue plaques, public paintings. But they're not, they're in the tiny minority. The first chapter of over 100 women named for streets is on my website, and they're women who are named for their public service, be that politicians, local community, or whatever it might be. But anyway, let's get down to business. Oops. At the time the RICS started, just the Surveyors Institution, then of course, with the Royal Mock coming to the 1940s, there were voluntary women workers organised by Octavia Hill, collecting rents and doing essentially social work with poor families in rental accommodation, largely in the London area. Doubtless there were such initiatives and activity elsewhere, but Hill's work was extensive and systematic, and indeed it was called the Octavia Hill system. And after her death, developed into a professional association with formal qualifications, leading in a direct line to what is now the Chartered Institute of Housing. By the way, you may well know Octavia Hill's name as being one of the founding members of the National Trust. You have found the National Trust. After a degree in history at Bedford College and the Women's College of the University of London, Irene Martin, as she then was, by the way, I spent years calling her Irene until I met her family members, and I met her grandsons, and she's Irene. But I only learned that recently. There we are. Anyway, after her history degree, she did a social work diploma, which led her into this world of sort of housing and housing management. And she worked for the Crown Estates. And in 1922, she took what for many years, and we know now the representation, was an unusual step in qualifying as a chartered surveyor. Unlike the legal profession, where there is much evidence and indeed court action of women trying to apply and failing, being turned down before the Sex Disqualification Removal Act in 1919, I'm not aware that any women tried to join the Surveyors Institution before that, but I will admit that I haven't read, every older meeting minutes for the preceding couple of decades. Anyway, Miss Martin, as she was, worked with the famous architect Louis de Soissons for about 6 months, and then very soon she set up in practice on her own account, and she ran that practice from 1924 to, wait for it, 1972. Irene Barclay is rightly stated as the first to gain chartered status, but she studied alongside Evelyn Perry, another woman who qualified. I seem to have not got Evelyn's picture. How horrible of me. Sorry, I put a picture of Evelyn Perry. I've only ever found one picture of Evelyn Perry. Maybe RSS has got more. But they worked in partnership. Actually, the firm was called Barclay and Perry. They studied together. They set up a partnership in Finsbury Square. And they didn't just sit there quietly and qualify. Alongside private practice, Barclay was secretary to the St Pancras Housing Association, now Origin Housing, from 1925 to 1972. And Evelyn Perry also worked for St Pancras. She had a short career, Evelyn Perry. She stopped working in the 40s and married somebody quite exalted and was doing ambassadorial stuff in America. They wrote, both of them jointly, wrote lengthy reports for government and also private commissions on slum clearance and redevelopment, not only for several London boroughs, but Edinburgh, Birmingham and other areas, usually jointly, as I say. Barclay broadcast, there's Evelyn Perry. There we are, there's Evelyn Perry. Barclay broadcast and there's a Radio Times entry for her doing a talk for sixth formers in the 1930s on housing. And she wrote extensively for the left-wing press, the New Statesman, the Fabians, and the like. And she always tried to promote surveying as a career. And here she is in a book on, I do apologise, careers. Things getting a bit funny. Careers for women. The Road to Success, Margaret Cole's a famous name, if you know the political history of that era. And she wrote the property management section. That book's quite funny. It's got everything from medicine to, beauticians and what have you. It's a fantastic document of its time. But she was promoting housing management, and indeed wrote a letter to her former tutor saying she hoped women became surveyors. And there we can see her on a panel of a very influential publication that came out just after or in the Second World War, prompted by the evacuees and the people finding that evacuees had very often come from inadequate housing along with other nutritional problems and all sorts of things. There we are. She became Mrs. Barclay. Miss Martin became Mrs. Barclay in 1925. Her husband did exceptional charity work, particularly in and after the Second World War. He was a pacifist. He was actually imprisoned in the Second World War for pacifism. But she was very much the breadwinner. All this wonderful charity work that he did didn't actually pay the bills. And there is still, by the way, a firm of structural engineers in London called Michael Barclay Engineering, and Michael Barclay's the one in the jacket. That's the older son there. He died some years ago. His firm is still going. And all of her work is based around an ethos which has as much resonance today as it did a century ago. She put people at the centre of property, seeking to rehouse communities together after some appearance. Abhorring sending them to out-of-town tower blocks, as she saw sort of 30 years after she was first working. And voicing the human element here in a post-war fuel conference. People are not sacks of flour, they are human beings. As we know, poorly constructed, mould-infested rental property and homelessness are still very much with us, and the vital need for an appropriate quality and quantity of public and low-rent housing has often been ignored or indeed actively opposed for decades. But Barclay summed up her central philosophy in her book, written at, never mind. She summed up her central philosophy in her book, written as a professional rather than personal autobiography, that without good quality housing, we cannot function as people. Physical and mental health will suffer, and then if we haven't got physical and mental health, we can't work, we can't access education, it's fundamental. In terms of public memory, there's a plaque outside a housing block named for Mrs. Barclay in Allyship Street. If you stand facing Euston Station with the green behind you, it's down the right-hand side. And that was where she worked, Somerstown. And there is a small People's Museum in Somerstown now, which has a lot of information on Irene Barclay and Evelyn Perry and some other early surveyors as well. A blue plaque is going to be unveiled on the 22nd of May this year in her former home office at St Martin's House, Polygon Road. And there's going to be a podcast for English Heritage on that in April. So hopefully the wider world will get to hear not just about a tick box first woman, but chartered surveyor, but someone with an extremely long and influential career where politics and indeed underlying non-conformist religious grounding was manifesting what she did. We know, it's been talked about today, that there is still a gender imbalance across many aspects of society, and certainly surveying, though not all professions. You all know that medicine and law is over 50% women at entry level. Veterinary science is something towards 90% women at entry level now. Obviously that's changed dramatically over a very small number of decades. But diversity is what's sought, not undue swing in any one direction. And the blue plaque to Mrs. Barclay, review of women in statues, street names and the like, are important because, as I said, public representation, role models and mentors are vital. Young women and girls need to see that roles are open to them. And importantly, older women, established in careers, need to see that senior roles are open to them, as well as supporting and enabling the next generation. I'm very concerned on there still being too few senior women taking the next step. I hope you've enjoyed hearing a little bit about the first women surveyors, that learning about their lives brings you some inspiration and guidance, and that the issues they sought to address are something we can all continue to work to change. Land and property are central to all aspects of human existence. I don't need to tell a group of surveyors that. And we must all work to ensure that the profile of those working in this intrinsic cog should not be unduly skewed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carrie. I hope everyone else joined me in learning those from that presentation. So thank you for sharing that with us. Right, so we're going to move on to the first panel discussion for the afternoon, which is going to be moderated by Antonia Belcher, fellow of the RICS and OBE. No big deal. So if the rest of the panelists could please come find your seats on the stage and get settled while Antonia does introductions.
Good afternoon. We are all here today as we know how powerful and necessary it is to create a welcoming and inclusive environment for women in our profession and for the wider built environment. I think most of us will recognise that significant strides have been made in recent years towards gender equality, but this is not a linear pathway. Reversals, stumbling blocks, setbacks occur. That said, there is a noticeable shift towards greater equality and growing awareness of the importance of diversity and inclusion in both the workplace and society generally. But there is still significant work to be done to achieve fair, full gender equality. We still see disparities in leadership positions, in pay, and issues around harassment and discrimination. continued efforts like today to push, promote and embed diversity in fair policies and practices and fostering inclusive environments remains critical every day of the year. International Women's Day is a time to celebrate the efforts made, the achievements secured, and all the hard work you all do to improve our industry and profession. It is still very much needed, and thank you for coming today. On this panel session, we have 5 wonderful women who are going to interrogate the process and the progress made, the how and why, and where further progress is being hindered. They will discuss how equity can be improved, especially around leadership, and where our networks can better assist. And how do we foster that utopia for women? We will follow a Q&A. I am delighted to welcome and present our panellists. They will each introduce themselves after I've told you who they are. So firstly, we have Anna Afolabi, a founding director at Mood and Space in Black Women in Real Estate. Beanish Hanif, a director at Sandton Chartered Surveyors. Claire Johnson, Deputy Head of Profession Evaluation Office Agency. Lorinda Kuddle, Diversity and Inclusion Business Partner at Addison Young. And Catty Robinson, Senior Project Manager at East Riding of Yorkshire Council. So would you like to just tell everyone about yourselves and then I'll start asking the questions.
Hi, I'm Beanish Hanif. I'm a Director of Sandton Chartered Surveyor. I found my setup in 2017 and I'm a management surveyor and I specialise in property management and I enjoy being a member of RICS. And
my name is Katie Robinson. I'm a Senior Project Manager at East Riding Yorkshire Council and I'm also the Campaign Manager for the National Association of Women in Construction for Yorkshire.
Good afternoon everybody, I'm Claire Johnson, I'm Deputy Head of the Surveying Profession at the Valuation Office Agency and essentially my role is to recruit, develop and retain the surveyors that we need to meet current and future workforce planning needs. So that includes 450 people on development programmes.
Hi, I'm Lorinda Kuddle. I'm D&I business partner at Avison Young. My background is actually D&I risk and HR in financial services. So I've just recently moved over in the last couple of years to commercial real estate and finding it very interesting.
Okay, I'm going to move forward a little bit. Hi, I'm Hannah Afolabi. I'm founder and managing director of Mood and Space, which is a development consultancy that specialises in regeneration and placemaking. I'm also the founder of Black Women in Real Estate, which some of you here would know about. It's a community that supports Black women within the industry, and we really focus on connecting, empowering and growing Black women within the sector. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I ask each of you to share your insights on programmes and initiatives that are working to support women in surveying and the challenges hindering those processes?
so there are various women in the various networks such as Women in Surveying, Women in the State Agency. So they are quite helpful because they are connecting various women working in different sectors or a different career pathway. So it's quite helpful to get to have support from people who have been through the process. So I feel that's a very huge support that women have.
As my role as the campaign manager of the National Association of Women in Construction for Yorkshire, I'm running a campaign to address the widespread inequalities in PPE provision. This is not just among women but other minority groups in the construction industry. We recently found that nearly 2/3 of women were not receiving women-specific PPE from their employers, which is just giving such a subtle kind of message to these women that this is a man's industry, and it's absolutely not. It's an inclusive industry and we need our PPE to reflect that, not just for inclusivity purposes but for safety as well.
Okay, so I'm really proud to say that our organisation has managed to achieve a gender balance of 41% women, and we've achieved that essentially through firstly investing in our own staff. So we attracted lots of very talented admin and technical staff to the agency who once they joined us, realised that they wanted to pursue a career in surveying. Previously, the only entry was through the graduate route. So we opened it up to distance learning through the then College of Estate Management, and have managed to get loads and loads of fantastic women through those programmes. And then when the Trailblazer apprenticeships came along, we converted that programme to the apprenticeship programme, and have used that to not only develop our own people, but attract new people to the profession, people from a much more diverse range of people kind of from different socio-economic backgrounds, males, females, and so again, yeah, as I said, we've now got 450 people on development programmes, so making great strides there. And this week, I'm really excited to say that we've launched our returners programme. So Tina mentioned the shocking statistic around the length of a female surveyor's career in the industry. What we're trying to do is try and attract some of those people back into the profession in a really supported environment, so to be a light touch recruitment process, to bring them in, we'll support them, we'll give them the necessary training, not only to do the job, but also to feel that they are supported, to give them that confidence that they need, and ultimately get them through the permanent recruitment process so they can have a long and flourishing career with us, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think it's really good to have initiatives that are geared towards women, but it's also important in an organisation, and this is what Avison Young have been doing, is looking at the infrastructure that already exists. So where do the gaps start developing in your learning, in your processes? Where is our recruitment maybe not as active as it should be in terms of like returners coming back to work? Who are we working with? So we're assessing all of that information as well as having programs in place. So 3 of the things that we do globally that we're really invested in is we have obviously the ERGs, the Employee Resource Group networks, but making sure they're not tick box exercises. So, have they got budget to do what they need to do to deliver? So making sure we're investing in that with money, putting our money where our mouth is, making sure that the ERGs, hold some accountability with an exec sponsor, and the exec sponsor is making sure that, change is taking place, because it's their responsibility at the end of the day. They're getting paid a lot of money, execs and CEOs, to change the culture, and it starts from them. Mentoring programs. So, we've got mentoring programs for succession, but we should be having mentoring programs throughout. Mentoring programs for returners, mentoring programs for women who maybe are struggling with their promotion processes, finding out more, and things like that. And employee engagement surveys. Get your employee engagement surveys and find out what your data is saying, and then we're tailoring our programs and content to what is coming from those surveys. So what do women want? What do returners want? What do women who have not progressed earlier on in their careers but want to progress now age-wise, what do they want? And then tailoring content for them. So really looking at the infrastructure as well as building some of these programs that we've been speaking about.
Yeah. So I think, especially with this question, there are so many initiatives that are happening within the industry, within individual organisations, so internally as well as externally, and we've all today mentioned a few of them. I think the challenge is, and I'll focus more on the challenge if that's okay, the challenge I think that's hindering the process of investing in women is, I think, really about the intersectionality, I think, of what that means. Because if you think about the general improvement we've seen over time, especially for women, it's been a certain type of women that reaches the top. And I think we need to have probably a broader conversation around the intersectionality of women and how we can progress and ensure that everyone's progressing. So 41% is amazing, but what does that mean if actually we're still leaving a significant proportion of people behind? And then another challenge I think is that internal initiatives, especially, again, they're amazing and they're great, but sometimes, they ask for women to give their time, volunteer their time without any pay, without any recognition. And actually that's taken its toll on some of these women and actually hindering their progression. And so if we think about it in comparison to the white man, how many of them are asked to volunteer their time in the same way that women are asked to volunteer their time to invest in the company's DEI policies? And then to take it a step further, if you think about the toxicity of that relationship, is sometimes you're giving up your time and you're giving up your energy, and some of these policies aren't reflecting within the day-to-day life of the person that you've just taken time from. So I'm not saying that these are bad, the initiatives are amazing, but I think we also have to remember in terms of the challenges generally, that women are also taking an emotional baggage alongside their just general day-to-day work, and what we can do more about and more in terms of alleviating that. So just to clarify, I do believe that DEI initiatives are important and it's necessary, but we just need to make sure that we are actually protecting the women internally in terms of the initiatives being psychologically beneficial to those women and not just taking from them without the opportunity for them to progress.
Thank you all. And Hannah, can I just ask one particular question? Of the 41%, is anyone actually concentrating on the data to break that down to show how the intersectionality issues are really playing out, to your knowledge?
I think there is data out there.
We can find it.
I think personally for Black women in real estate, data is really important for us, and one of the things we have been seeking for is clarity as to where the information sits across the board. I would say it's not sophisticated enough. I wouldn't say it's not there. I just think that then that's another reflection of where people might start to feel like they don't exist or don't belong when the data that they've continually given isn't reflected in any communication, isn't utilised to change people's lived experiences.
Thank you. On that note, can I ask the group, how do you think we can ensure equitable opportunities for women come along so that they can access leadership positions in our industry?
So, for instance, right now we do have an ecosystem that's fragmented, it's broken. Part of it is not implemented, some of the policies. So to bring everything in place, I think more and more collaboration is needed between different industries, private sector, public sector. We are very fortunate now that collaboration is much more easier than could have been 20 years ago. So I feel that that's very important because we do hear from various companies, people that they are doing remarkable things. So they need to amplify its impact, to broaden the range and to make it more approachable. I feel that more collaboration would certainly help.
I mean, and we need to be doing that every day of the year rather than just on certain days.
Yes.
I think, especially from someone who's relatively early in my career, I found it that when I came into my career, I had a mentor almost at all points until I got to a certain point in my career and I was just kind of left to my own devices essentially. And I found that gap in guidance and gap in kind of a role model really difficult. As someone who's still continuously wanting to move up the roles, I found that really difficult without a mentor, and I think a lot of people out there and a lot of companies have really great mentoring schemes, but only for early people, kind of graduate schemes and things like that, people coming into their careers at an early stage. They don't really counter for kind of people returning to work and those women that want to kind of progress beyond that point. And I think it's really important that companies actually speak to their women and say, what do you want? They need to speak to their workforce and actually get their opinions on it rather than just kind of setting policies in place and not kind of getting any feedback on it.
And a systematic mentoring program would maintain that dialogue all the way through the career and actually be very instrumental. I do think it's something RICS should think about in a more formal structure. Claire?
So thinking about my own career, I've had some great male allies who have probably believed in me more than I've believed in myself, and they've encouraged me to put myself forward for things kind of out of my comfort zone. has been great. And now I think in our organisation, people who work in our organisation will be able to back me up on this. We've got some great female role models there as well. But I think we also need to think about the barriers, and imposter syndrome is one of those things that we talk about a lot, which stops people actually putting themselves forward for opportunities. So one of the things that we've done is give people temporary opportunities, so it's kind of a safe zone for them to step up, undertake a role at a higher level, and they can go back to what they were doing if they want to, but more often than not, they carry on, they build their confidence and then are successful. And so we've got some fantastic leaders out there who have had those opportunities.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, policies is one space where we can do to make it more equitable for our employees and for women. And it's that view on what that policy brings. It's not just a tick box, it's not just a piece of paper. Because at the moment, one of the things with the policies that we have is paternity leave and maternity leave. And a lot of people are now turning it into parental leave. And what that means is when you're interviewing at the moment and you're interviewing a woman of a certain age, some leaders will make an assumption that if I give this promotion to this person, she's going to want to have a baby, she's going to take off 26 weeks. But if you have parental leave, you're going to look at a male going for that same promotion the same way. So you're not just going to be discriminating against the woman and like, no, it's a bit risky, let's go with you instead. But the real threat exists with him as well, that you could do that. And I think there has to be an education piece on that as well. Why parental policies are important over shared and paternity and maternity. But that's just one aspect. And then there has to be that infrastructure, again, of learning, carrying out those promotion processes to make it more equitable. But again, that shouldn't be down to the individuals who are underrepresented. It should be leadership saying, we need to invest in this. We need to do this. We should be changing our environment to make it more welcoming for people coming in. And I think we do put the burden on, you're a black woman, what do black women want? You tell us and we'll do the work, but you have to do majority of the work. You're an Asian woman, you want to do the work. And I think we need that mindset to change, because leadership get paid to do the thinking. A lot of money to pay to do the thinking. So, we are a resource, but they need to implement it and start changing their mindset as well.
Yeah, completely agree. I think there needs to be an education piece about the difference between equity and equality. I think people still think it's the same thing, and it's just not. And I think really for like equity just means providing that platform for people and what they need, as opposed to this idea that everyone's given the same opportunity, but someone's shackled with a whole load more of burden. And so I think the leadership journey on the basis of equity will look completely different for women. And so culturally, we need to stop assuming that women should have the same professional career that men have. Why should we, when we're not? We aren't the same. We should have the same equity to achieve the things that we want to, but we do have different lifestyle choices. And in which case, then the companies and organisations and the general profession needs to be culturally more flexible around the fact that women should be given the opportunity to access leadership, and that journey should be able to look different than our male counterparts.
Thank you. And Narinda, just following up, as an expert in HR, do you think corporate HR operations are trying to address this? I mean, are trying to do what Hannah's saying, trying to create a different perspective for the women leaders compared to the men leaders, and then sort of promoting that, or is it a battle that's yet to be taken?
I think it's a battle yet to be taken, because again, like Hannah said, the data maybe isn't as sophisticated as it should be to provide some of that change at the moment. And that's one thing that leadership does want, is what is the data saying, what are verbatim comments saying, what's available saying. So I think it is something that HR wants to do, but we probably aren't in the space where we should be at the moment. But I came here a few weeks ago and we saw this presentation with the data, and that was so helpful. And collectively, we're all working together to have that data. And then I think we've all got access to the report, and we're now using it to shape some of our policies, our L&D, our processes, the thinking, and that data's reaching the places where it needs to be heard.
It's good to hear. Obviously, data is going to drive change as much as anything, isn't it? So on that note, how does my panel think that networks could be more collaborative to support women across the profession?
As I said previously, that there is a lot of work. In some instances, one individual is driving some network, some like yourself, and so if we start to do more collaboration, various different parties, we come, for example, to these type of events, and we can connect more often instead of leaving it to just 8th of March.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to have more sort of activities around this subject and topic, so we can certainly collaborate more and improve.
Do you think we have enough networks, or is there space?
It's about, I think my mic is gone. I don't think we have enough network, but we don't want to certainly, we want to be more inclusive. We want to talk more about inclusive environment instead of being more fragmented. So collaboration is very, very, very much important.
And I think on that point, I was going to say, even if we don't have more gender-specific networks, gender will still be a part of all the networks that already exist. So, Seeks in surveying, we'll look at the nuances of women. I think we spoke about that when we had a chat before. Or, black professionals in construction, they've got that in. And I heard a quote the other day, and I thought it was really great, like, we shouldn't just remember it on the 8th. It's not like on Valentine's Day we just give a card and say, I love you for the rest of the year, that's it now, it's over. And that's like what Women's Day is, like we give you the card, you get the badge, and it's over, and it shouldn't be. And I think the networks can still keep that alive because they've all got women in them.
Yeah, I think there's so much value in having those networks, being able to provide role models that are relatable for kind of whatever diverse group you're part of. I think that there's such an issue, this kind of following from what you said, in terms of there's such a lack of kind of communication and collaboration between all of these groups because there's so many. And I think there should be a platform somewhere where you can see, whether it be regionally and things like that, to see actually what groups are out there, and that could be something that's either set by professional bodies or things like that. And I think that would be a really good opportunity for actually the groups themselves to work with other groups as well, not just kind of for individuals to see what groups they want to be part of.
So I definitely think collaboration can have more impact than everybody kind of having their own initiatives. And in the conversations we've had today, there are things that I'm thinking, great, yeah, we need to join up on that. There are lots of people that I'm going to be speaking to over the next few months. But I think it's targeting those. So we have loads of networks at the moment. It is a little bit confusing, I guess, particularly to new people joining the profession that have got so many different networks. And so it's just how we bring those together to make a real impact and not still keep having the same conversations, but actually seeing positive action out there.
Yeah, and I was just going to say one thing is that the networks need to be available maybe before people come into the industry as well to get that awareness, because you've already got the awareness when you join the industry, but if we want people to come in at entry level or we want people to come return, I think the collaboration, the understanding, the return on investment and what joining that network will give back to you has to be there, has to be a bit clearer.
And as employers, we've all got something different to offer, haven't we? So, if we go out there collectively and explain to the next generation of surveyors what we can offer, then it's more compelling a story, isn't it? To bring people in.
I agree. I think collaboration is key. I think understanding how we can work together to adjust and change specific genders is really important. But for me personally, when I founded Black Women in Real Estate, it really was about a personal journey that I was on. I had gone to the women networking events, I had gone to the diversity events, and I didn't have the connection I needed leaving the space. So for me, setting up Black Women in Real Estate, I was looking for that kind of sisterhood, that community where I could let down my guard and I could be my most authentic self. And so I think there is still very much a need for the individuality of these communities. It's really important not to bunch us all together because we are so different in our walks, and even within Black women in real estate, there is a real diversity within that. So yes, we are Black women, but there's a variety of different underlying intersectionalities within that. So it's very, very important that we keep that individuality while coming together, and which we do actually as much as we can, coming together to challenge and to change issues within the industry, to create narratives or campaigns or to lobby. And I think that's probably what we're talking about in terms of the outward, I guess, unity that could come together, where you bring a bunch of networks together to start to attract young talent and or retain senior leaders or challenge the industry generally.
Thank you. So how do we create that inclusive culture that's going to support women entering the profession and staying in the profession? Surely that's the key, isn't it?
So we have great retention amongst the people that qualify with us, and I was trying on the train down to think, why is that? What is it about our culture? And I met somebody who is an ex-VOA member of staff who qualified through one of those programs, and I said, what is it? And she said, well, it's inclusive, and it's like a family, and so we need to kind of ensure that across the whole surveying world, it feels like you're in a family, and if something's not working out in one employer, you can move to another employer. You don't have to leave the industry altogether.
And I think a lot of our projects are targeted at the younger women coming through, and we need to have them, we need to retain them, they need to stay in the industry, they need to spend their entire life and die in this industry from this day that they graduate. But that's not where women are leaving. Women are leaving later on in their careers. So what are we putting in place for them to stay? Are we asking them? Again, what does the data say? What are we asking them? And I think, we need to take a full life cycle approach, not just at the beginning, because people are feeling if you invest in one woman at this age, we're going to keep her for her whole career, but you don't think of it when you invest in a man, like he might go tomorrow, it's okay, we'll just replace him with another man. But we don't invest in you. And I think, there's women who are a bit older who want to progress in their career, and I think we overlook them sometimes. So our programs, our succession planning, progression planning should be at any age and be transparent that it's for any age.
Yeah, I think the retention issue is the biggest one, really. I think organisations are looking at the young upcoming people to solve their diversity targets without actually really considering what is happening at mid-career level, which is where we get the biggest dropout of women generally. And I think really it's about listening. We don't have a culture of listening at all, and I think that goes back to the data point. There isn't an understanding as to what's actually going on. I don't know if anyone can mark and say this is why everyone's leaving the industry at this specific time, and that's because we're not really collecting any information to try and change the narrative and change the experience of some of these women. But also it might, it just might be that they're worn out. Yeah. Or, like most people, they decide that they want something different in their life after they get to a certain level. And again, organisations aren't flexible enough about what the journey to leadership looks like. And therefore, these women leave and move on to find different routes. So I think we need to listen, and we just really need to make sure that there's enough flexibility to keep some of these women.
And I think, what was the data? So, we had some data and it said by the age of 39, a really high proportion of women leave the industry. Where do they go? What other industries are accepting these women at 39 that we wouldn't if they came to us? Because they're clearly going somewhere where they can reskill, retrain and be accepted 39 plus. But they're not choosing to stay
So
here.
at the point they resign their RICS membership, we need to understand why they're resigning their RICS membership and how we can keep in touch with them, so bring them back in at the point that it's right.
Because the skills they learn in the RICS, clearly other people want that skill set, they're happy to accept it, but we're not happy to value them and we're happy to let them go. So I think, mid-career, we need to find out more, mid-age.
But your point is really pertinent as well, is because we don't actually do much accepting at mid-age or mid-career, and so we get a massive drop-off but no replenishment, because we don't necessarily take on people from other industries because they have to have a technical skill. And who wants to start again at that age after the growth that they've gone through? So I think there is, like you said, there is a point about us just also opening our doors for other people to sidestep into.
And I think there's an issue with apprenticeships that people kind of immediately picture school leavers, but actually they're really good for career changers. We've got apprentices who are 65, so it's not just school leavers that are coming in. That and it's so as a profession, we need to be selling that to people out there, that there are opportunities to move across professions.
Yeah, and there's people just a really heartwarming example at Avison Young. We actually had somebody who was temporary on our front of house desk, and he actually had a qualification, so we used our apprenticeship levy to convert it, and he's now working in our valuations team. So that was really nice, because a little bit of emotional intelligence with that person has brought him back over. But you can use the apprenticeship levy for your skills gaps anywhere, not just necessarily for 16 and 18-year-olds.
Thank you, and I think it's worth also remembering that low numbers of women in the profession, and by definition you've got a smaller group that's trying to get to leadership positions. So the more women we can bring into the industry, the easier or the better it's going to be able to try and get that leadership in position. I'm very cognizant of what Dave Gadia said during the week, that women who do get to a high level in business, they find it really hard to stay there because of misogyny and the task of trying to be a woman on a fairly male board. Right, I think it's probably time for Q&A. I don't know how that's operating, Sybil.
Yes, we're a bit over time, so we're going to be limited
Okay,
on
sorry.
questions. But we can take one or two and then we'll move to the next one.
It would have to be Kelly, wouldn't it?
I'm curious around the difference between public sector and private sector, and the number of women that are in there, and I just wonder if there is any thoughts on why there are more women in the public sector.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I was looking at the stats on the chartered surveyors that we recruit, and actually, although the profession is only 19-20% female, our recruits are 50% female. So there is something that we're doing right that's attracting women to the profession. So I think it's largely around the supportive culture. We have flexible working, hybrid working, and we allow people to agree their working patterns to suit their needs. Obviously, the business needs too, but I think it is probably a piece of work that needs to be done to just really understand the difference.
And I think with public sector, just a personal example, my husband is a solicitor and he worked in public sector, and when he went in there, his mindset was, this is a job for life, like I'm going to be here until I retire as well. So already he had that mindset before he went.
I just joined to qualify, and
yeah, you're still there.
Still there.
But so I think sometimes again people think that if they're going for a public sector job, that's where their career is going to be, and they've got opportunities for career mobility. Yeah. Maybe some private sector doesn't have that career mobility opportunity, but it does in public sector.
And we actually had I don't know if everyone can hear me, we actually had a public sector forum a few weeks ago where we talked about this, bringing the public and the private sector together a bit more and being more open and understanding to the fact that some people might want to bounce back and forth between, depending on where they're at in their careers, and let people move. If someone wants to go from public to private and then come back later when flexibility is needed, you should be embracing, empowering, and encouraging that. So the two sectors do need to be talking to each other and figuring out how we retain talent in the sector, not just in our organizations.
We have some questions from online as well. So Linda asked, it's fantastic to bring people back into the industry. What do we anticipate will be the biggest barrier?
I guess confidence, probably, how we're expecting. Although we are thinking it's not going to be one size fits all. We're absolutely going to treat everybody as an individual and really understand what it is that that is preventing them applying for permanent positions. So I guess if you talk to me in 6 months' time, I'll have the answer to that question because I've spoken to them all. But we're just prepared to be very flexible. We've got a really flexible programme set up so that it will support people irrespective of their needs. And I should just say as well, it's not just for women, it's for anybody who's left the profession.
I think also confidence from the managers where you're coming back into the industry as well. So, you know, they might be a bit unnerved. This person's been out of the business. I'm going to have to retrain them. I'm going to have to bring them up to speed. And all those assumptions can come out as nervousness to taking people back on as well. So I think it could be the confidence. But again, as I keep saying, and you're going to be like, oh, she just said that again. But, you know, like the infrastructure, it has to be there to support managers and hiring managers bringing people in as well.
Yes, yeah, and we're absolutely looking to support the
And
managers.
I also think that we still don't have work-life balance, and we still don't have flexibility that we should have had today. For so many years, flexible working we've been hearing, but still, in reality, it's still not there as much as should have been. So if somebody was to, or if I presume that this could be one of the barriers, because thinking that, oh, why should I go back? Because the industry is very rigid. So, you know, that's one of the biggest issues that women face.
We'll have to wrap there.
Okay. Can I thank the panellists? Thank you very much.
Alright, so apologies to anyone on the live stream who didn't get to your questions. We'll take those and try and get answers close to today so that we can get your responses to you. So thank you to that panel. I'm giving Pete a little bit of time. He's going to be our next speaker. He's going to give a bit of his why he gets involved in the DEI space. And then we'll have a bit of a fireside chat with some more of our gentlemen members following his keynote. So without further ado, Pete Bye.
Firstly, thank you very much for inviting me back. It's a real honour to be here to help celebrate International Women's Day. I wanted to share some experience that I've had in terms of investing in women. Firstly from a work perspective, then from a family perspective, and then to go and talk about some elements of where I see opportunities for allyship. So, in terms of my background and introduction, I'm the head of property and operations at Oxford Science Enterprises. We've raised £850 million to invest in companies from Oxford University in very early stage businesses that will hopefully go on to change the world. We now have 120 companies across Oxford, including over 2,000 employees in those companies. And normally I'll be standing up here moaning about the absence of laboratories and suitable space in and around Oxfordshire, but my side hustle at OSE is to chair the D&I committee. And it's something that we established three years ago, I think, and I think at that point OSE had around 40% women in the organisation and no women in leadership roles. We formed the committee, we had some real focus from the leadership team in the organisation at the time, and over the last 3 or 4 years we've corrected that data. We're a very data-oriented company. So we now have over 50% women in the organisation, with over 50% in the management team. So we are on the right path, got lots of other areas to look at in terms of intersectionality and other sort of underrepresented groups, but we feel like we're getting there. And in order to get there, we had to give it some real focus, and we had to give some real action. So we looked at policies and procedures. We introduced some family-friendly policies around things like menopause, miscarriage, adoption, flexible working. We looked at our recruitment procedures to make sure that people weren't being recruited via the old boys network, and actually opening up the talent pool to make sure that we were giving ourselves as many opportunities as possible. And we made some really key hires. We need some fabulously talented leaders, female leaders, who were able then to demonstrate that our company was a place that women could thrive, and then subsequently brought in a host of fabulous women behind them. We also work with our wider community in and around Oxford to help promote D&I, especially with our companies who are, especially in the early stages, to ensure that they have good working practices when it comes to D&I policies and setting themselves up in the very best way to ensure that they then can build inclusive teams. So we are signatories of the Investing in Women Code. So every penny that we spend annually, we track and we submit that to the British Business Bank, and alongside that we demonstrate how many female founders that we gave money to throughout the course of that year. And the good news is, and it's not great news, it's good news, we are getting there. So 3 years ago we had 18% of companies had at least one female founder, and we're very now close to our initial target, which was 30% of companies with at least one female founder. Clearly there's another 20% there that will have to get made up, but we're at least moving in the right direction. We've funded a role in the university to gather data across all academic levels to make sure that we understand the routes of women through academia, so that we can understand where the obstacles might be and where women are stepping off the train, and see if we can then correct that. And then finally, we are working embedded within the university to make sure that we're all completely aligned in terms of the policies that we're bringing in and the groups that we are working with. Talking from a family perspective, my first introduction into D&I came as a result of my wife and I having a conversation as we were expecting our first child around whether she would effectively have to sacrifice her career in order for us to have a family. And the conclusion that we came to was that no, that wasn't the right thing to do. My wife is a bit of a rock star. She's not actually a rock star, she's a lawyer. she does love karaoke, but she's a lawyer. And it was it felt like a very straightforward decision that we should split childcare 50-50 and not just childcare but the mental load as well. The childcare I got on board with very quickly, the mental load has taken a little bit longer to get in. It was really the first insight I had into what it was like to be perhaps not swimming against the tide, but not directly with it. And so for example, I shared the end of Sarah's maternity leave. This was all between 12 and 14 years ago. Sarah's maternity leave. We then have done various degrees of part-time working. Obviously, we've taken lots of dependent leave and parental leave along the way. And I guess I was shocked at the change in attitude that I experienced around my typically male-dominated teams and my managers, mostly reacting in concern and confusion rather than anything else. But it didn't occur to me at the time to make anything of that experience. I mean, most of the time, I felt like those characteristics of me were sort of more of a badge of shame than something to be celebrated and shared. And so I spent a large proportion of my career trying to hide those elements of what I was doing on the basis that it's all right, you do what you need to, as long as the client doesn't find out. And I guess bit by bit, as I've gained in experience and age, and the kids are a little bit older and more self-sufficient, and probably really importantly, I'm in a company where I feel safe. I feel much more comfortable sharing my sharing my thoughts about the importance of inclusion. And I think, you know, it seems pretty clear to me that I am, hopefully I'm not part of the problem. I can use my experience, my influence, my privilege to help others. And that is what I've been trying to do as part of my role as chair of the D&I committee. So I was going to make some suggestions to potential male allies, which really boils down to don't wait to be asked. If you see a problem, then you have two options. You can either go ahead and do something about it, or you can go and ask what help people need. And sometimes, I speak from experience as a man who will typically go and try and find a solution without necessarily knowing what the problem is. Sometimes it is good to ask. But you can do all sorts of things to show allyship, and they can be really quite low-key to start with. So you can just go and attend events, and I'm delighted to see a few more male allies in the room than I saw last year, for sure. You can call in inclusive behaviour in the workplace. So, you know, even if it comes down to saying, you know what, maybe we shouldn't have a big drinks night on a Friday night as part of the, the team social. Maybe we should think about trying to be a bit more inclusive in terms of how we position these things, and possibly also try to perhaps show a bit more honesty and vulnerability about who you are and what you do. My role model in my workplace was a CEO who blocked out sections of his diary without making it private when he was picking his kids up from school. And that meant that I no longer blocked that out as private in my diary because I felt that he got it. And that was extremely helpful for me. And I would say if all else fails, kindness and good intent will take you quite a long way. My wife said I had to be really careful about making a demand on women in a very big group like this, but I would say, tentatively, that I think there will be some men out there who are very keen to help, but they might not know how to express that help, and so actually might need guidance on what that help looks like. I also wanted to finish by just saying to Tommy that performance was fantastic. But it was absolutely fantastic, and I loved that piece about not standing on the sidelines.
Thanks, Pete. Right, so if we can get the other gentlemen up on the panel, I'm going to moderate this discussion. You will see culture gasps. I have purposely curated an all-white male panel at International Women's Day. Hear me out. Hear me out. They've been pretty brief. They knew this was coming. So a fact I like to use sometimes is pointing out the presidential wall behind me. You can't see it because the screen's down, but if you ever do get a chance to look at it, spend a lot of time interrogating it like I have, you could take away some fun facts, like there are twice as many Edwards as there are women. 4 times as many Johns as there are women. How many Black presidents of any gender? Indian presidents of any gender? Arab presidents of any gender? 0. That's uncomfortable, right? I know I started funny and then I brought it way down. Sorry, bring it back a bit. But we have to start facing those truths. To Hannah's point, to Jermaine point, we can't have the conversation just about women without really interrogating and breaking it down into the different kinds of women, the different kinds of diversity and the intersections that exist in this beautiful profession. And so my point in all of this, and pointing this out, is that over 75% of the membership are white men. So to the Edwards, and the Johns, and the Georges, and the, who else is on here? Andrew, Charles. It's not going to change without you, right? And so I'm speaking to the teams, I'm calling out to the universe, to the energy, but all of us in this room encourage those men to come in. I asked these gentlemen, hey, would you like to do this? And all of them did, they're like, should I? Is that space for me? Are we allowed to register for International Women's Day? Yes. This conversation is about women, but it's for everyone because it's not going to change without everyone getting involved. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now. I'm going to turn my attention to these gentlemen, and I'm going to start with the first question. What do you think it is that's holding men back from getting involved?
I'll start, if that's okay, yeah?
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't matter who they are, just talk. Sorry, introduce yourselves first, and then answer the question.
Hi, I'm Chris Moran. I'm a residential surveyor. I've got a small RICS-regulated firm in Sheffield. And I also have something which sounds very grand, a foundation, where I help young surveyors, well not young surveyors, surveyors new to the industry, student surveyors from less represented backgrounds. And I'll speak about that a bit more, I think, when we kind of get on that topic area.
So, hello everyone, I'm Blaine Perriton. I currently sit on RICS Governing Council and I am founder and owner of a quantity surveying practice called Pride IMS. And I was kindly asked by Sybil to come today. A lot of communication has been around fear and terror, but as I say, you'll know fear when you are a white man at Independent Women's Day and on panel.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon everyone. I'm Paul Bailey, I'm the head of property practice for RICS.
And you've already met Pete. So, to my first question, like we haven't asked it already, what do you think it is that's holding more men back? I did hit on the fact that, it's the not feeling invited, doesn't feel like you belong in this space. Can you guys expand on that a little bit? Like what is it that's keeping more men from getting involved? Because like you said, Pete, there are definitely men out there that want to get in this space. I forgot a point that I was going to make. Sorry, this isn't about me, I know. But can you please, this is my plea out to the profession, I've heard it a number of times, and I probably myself have echoed it at the beginning stages of my career because it's catchy, it's funny, but can we take pale male stale and put it in the bin, please? Because it is keeping the 75% that we need in this conversation outside of the conversation feeling like the enemy. So can we all just agree, it's funny, it's catchy, put it in the bin, so that we can just move forward. Okay, continue on.
Can I? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think one of the huge factors is, are we welcome? I've got a few anecdotes that I've been thinking of, and James, who's in the audience today, a really close surveying friend of mine, we're both extremely passionate about inclusivity, diversity, and he came up to visit me in Sheffield, and there was an event in Leeds quite recently, Women in Surveying, not very far up the road from me. And we didn't go because we just couldn't work out if we were allowed, if we were welcome. And I'm here now, so it's bizarre to think that. So my feedback is, if you, it's absolutely fine if it's a women's only event, obviously, because of the benefits of that. But if you want men to come as well, make it really obvious, and really, really obvious to us, that you want us, that we're welcome.
Capital red.
In my head, I've got a poster and there's a big red circle, and it says all men, all genders, or self-identifying, welcome, just so it's super clear. And I think you'll see a big increase as a result, because it's fear. It's I would say all four of us are quite nervous. It's like, are we welcome? Are we intruders today? This is your space, is it? Etc. etc. So I've got a couple of points, and I'll let the people talk, but the first one for me is you're welcome, come along.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll add to that I think it's really difficult at the moment because it's exactly as you say, it's that fear, but the key thing today, I think it's been, for me, really eye-opening, hearing a lot of stories and things. I am a man, so I don't have the same experience you will have, and I only know what I know. So without hearing it, and I think if men aren't in these discussions, nothing's generally going to change. If we're talking about 90% of leadership is male, if they're not in these conversations, it's not going to change, because you're all saying these fantastic things, but it's not really going to the right people, dare I say it, because we need these conversations to be had at every level. And I think if it's just, and I don't mean this in a horrible way, if it's just a group of females talking about it, it's not going to happen. And that was one of the reasons when Sybil did ask me to do this, and I ummed and ahed, and then got over my terror and said, yes, actually I will come. But actually it's been really powerful for me to hear some of the issues, because I generally don't know what I don't know. I had one example this week, and again, I'm just going to speak candid as I always do, with one of my staff through menopause. I have no idea or experience of this, so I don't know what it does, and I had to phone my mum and my auntie just to ask, what can I do to help? Because I don't know these things. So when one of my employees was going through it, I wanted to support and help, but I'm not equipped with the tools. So it's just, I think it goes back to kind of, yes, there are probably a few people that aren't interested and don't care, but for the people that do genuinely want to help, it's great to be part of discussions, and it's a pleasure to be here.
I forgot the question, so
The question is, what do you think it is that's holding men back from getting more involved?
Yeah, and maybe you could frame it, what's holding us all back. Maybe it's that way. It could, what's holding men back, what's holding anyone back. That's unhelpful, isn't it? So, and I just think it's, everyone said it, we can echo it. It's the fact that we have a desire to learn and share that, and we want to hear from people the things we don't know, and that's it. So I think there's a bit of fear on both sides that everyone a lot of the good intent gets missed, perhaps, in some of the language that surrounds it. I just think we just need to get better at communicating through, and we'll talk about how we do better the work we're doing, but I just think there's an appetite to do it, and maybe we haven't done a great job of sitting in the same room talking about stuff, so just need to do more of that. Simple.
So you already hit on a few of the things, Pete, in your remarks, but what are some of the things, what are some of the ways, big or small, that you think more leaders of every gender in the industry could be doing to invest in women, to move the dial on diversity and inclusion in general? What are some of those ways that people could start doing more, in your opinion?
So I think it's kind of mixing the two questions. I do think so for us as an organisation, I know for me as part of my journey, there is language plays a really important part, right? So actually getting used to discussing issues in a really constructive way, rather than backing off and thinking actually this is this is a problem for women or for black people or whatever, and there is sometimes there is a reluctance to step in and say the wrong thing, which then means that people stay back and stay out of the conversation completely, which is clearly the wrong thing to do. We spend lots of time as an organisation having these sort of awareness sessions and trying to have discussions around this sort of thing in a really progressive, constructive way. And sometimes it's painful, and quite a lot of the time you have very quiet sessions that then culminate in a massive discussion at the end, because people have stored up a lot of things that they want to talk about but haven't. And I think the messaging around International Women's Day, for example, it could be seen as exclusive towards men. That's not the way I see it. Actually, I think it's very clearly positioned as a celebration of women, and I think, and as I think I've alluded to in my family model, I think as if you want to, depending on your family model, family, you need to lift up both sides, right, and help both sides. In terms of how you can get in terms of investing in women, I think you've got to come back to making sure your organisation looks like it's a place where women can thrive, and that might come down to a number of things, being look at the policies, look at the website, look at the leadership team, and because typically people want to look at a website when you're looking at a potential job and see people like me, not me, definitely not like me, but people like them. And so I think, and I don't think these things come along by accident. It's a result of sustained focus of intention and action. So it's not going to change if you get into it for a year. You're going to have a sustained policy over 3, 4, 5 years before you're going to make any dent in it.
Just playing devil's advocate on that one, and again, I sit on GC, so one of my big things is the SME. So a lot of the topics and conversations have been about HR support platforms. Now, if we talk about the surveying firm in the Allyship that's 3 people, they might not have the infrastructure of a website and a glorious policy and things like that. So, and that makes up, I think it was 60% of our professionals made up of SME surveying firms. So a lot of this is targeted at your big corporates, but we're missing a huge demographic there of SMEs. My firm including that, it's a firm of 10 people, so we may not have a pretty website that has thousands of people that we can demonstrate. The other thing as well, and I think it was perfectly put about Valentine's Day point, it's one day a year that we celebrate that. For me, it almost diverts attention away from, yeah, we've done it, we've sent the card. Every firm has put up their pictures today of their 10 women that have volunteered to do it, and then it's your tick in the box. And I don't like that, because I think that gives a firm an easy out to an extent. You're saying you put a lovely picture up, and then we've now got next year. So I don't like things like that, but I understand why we do it, and we have to do more, but it can't just be once a year we talk about these things. The other thing, and apologies for people who were in my session earlier this morning, but I am going to raise it again, because I think it's pertinent to the point of leadership, is, you've turned off my mic, I don't blame you, I do the same, and this is stats, not mine, but men apply for a job when they meet only 60% of the criteria. Women will only apply for the job if they believe they have 100% of that criteria. That again, and it was echoed in the fellowship meeting I had today, that they would, again, understand why you've turned it off. But that's really important, and I think that stat echoes not just through our industry, but I think that's a real social issue there. The way females approach roles and whether they're put forward for it. And there was a couple of associate directors in my firm, females, who were not prepared to go for the director role because they said, I don't meet these 3 things, whereas every single other male applied for that role, despite them nowhere near being as good as the females. So I think that's something that we have to challenge, we have to communicate, and we have to make sure we're supporting that, because I do think that's a barrier, and unfortunately that is a self-made barrier for some reason, so we need to change that. I don't know the answer to it, I'm just saying that appeared to be a huge problem for me, that if you're not going for a role, because I don't think anyone would get a role if you actually had to apply for 100% of the role. I think Richard Branson said, take the role and then learn when you get it. So I think that's a huge problem at the moment.
Can I just build on the point Pete was making there? Just one more point, just in terms of bringing men into the conversation, is just making it feel safe for the men. A lot of whom perhaps are older and not as well educated in the language of the time and getting all the phrases right and not insulting people. And they don't not necessarily mean to, but it's like a minefield, which I think is why we're talking about the fear. Like my friends are like, well, why are you doing that today? Like, you'll get cancelled, and it's that like fear. So making it safe and understanding errors will happen, and educating those men in the right way so that they feel comfortable. I can tell this room's extremely supportive, but some female groups might be less so and might wait for a time to go, oh, you got that wrong, and sort of attack. And it's just making them feel safe so that they can fall over themselves with the wrong words which are outdated, and educating them in the right way.
Paul, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, I think interesting in some data, and obviously I work for the ICS measurement is important to us, and having good information so we can learn from it. I think that's really helpful when people share the data. I know Sybil's looking at that. I think that's a really important piece, and generally, I think there's a lot of hyperbole, but I've never been in a room where I felt like people were going to pick on me or say things. I don't feel threatened now. I don't feel like anyone's going to be saying anything mean. So, I think a lot of it is just pushing past that, and actually just communicating effectively to deliver what we want. I mean, this is, and we'll probably come on to it, but this is a really important profession that we're all part of. We all do really important things. The natural built environment is a crucial part of our society, our economy, etc. So we have a really important role to play as role models and to develop and deliver the professional services that actually add the value. We want the best people to do it. So I'm really interested in the role the profession plays and how we improve that through conversations like this to make sure we just get the best people. So that's my own sort of thoughts on this.
Yeah, we had an interesting conversation, Paul and I, because I just kind of blindsided him in the office and was like, hey, want to do something cool? And
still waiting.
Always say no to that answer. People ask you that. Always say no.
So he could say no. But no, the reason I asked Paul is, I'm going to hit on it for him here, is because he is a great ally without trying, and I think that's a brilliant thing. I mean, I'm sure you try, that's great. But like, it's second nature in the way that he approaches standards. He'll ask the questions, are we thinking about this, without me having to like stand on desk and be like, why aren't we talking about accessibility of the standard? Why aren't we thinking about this? Like, he'll ask the questions and then bring it to me and be like, hey, so is this something we should be focusing on? I'm like, heck yeah, it is. I'm so glad you asked that question. And so I wanted him to be on this panel because for me, he is a strong ally, because at least I know within his team, like, I'm not having to press, he's already asking me questions and then coming to me for collaboration and support. Right, so we wanted to go on more on this conversation. We're already getting up to the deadline. I don't want to crunch phase time at the end with closing remarks. I also don't want to eat into everyone's networking time to get out, see the exhibitors that are all of our fantastic networks, see the exhibition of National Association of Women in Construction photos. So we'll take a few questions, and then we're going to wrap with Ms. Faye's closing remarks, if that's all right. Yes, we've got one here. Can we get the mic? Sorry. Gotta make sure folks on the live stream can hear.
Hi everyone, Lisa Casey from Casey Consultancy. I just wanted to really recognise Tony, because I thought that spoken word before said it all. And I know up on the panel we were talking about we need to make it clearer and right ready, whatever, in capital letters. But I think the best way would be to send out Tony's message on LinkedIn, and for everyone who's a member to take ownership and share it amongst our colleagues and friends and get the message out there.
That's brilliant.
Thank you.
She is brilliant, right? It's probably the best decision I've made all year. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? Yeah, we've got one. Oh, we've got two. We'll go back here first.
Hello. I think we've done a really good job of getting a group of men who really care about diversity to come and sit on the panel. But just from the male perspective, how would you say that we should approach and bring them into the conversation who maybe don't see themselves there? They don't see equity and diversity as something that's necessarily important to them. How do we bring those people into that conversation?
I can jump on that one super quick. I know it's better answered by them, but there's pieces that I put out on this, and hopefully one coming in Property Week soon. But I think this is one where I'm going to put a call out to men in the profession of make your decision. You're either going to be a part of the solution or you're going to continue to be a barrier. And if you're going to continue to be a barrier, I kindly ask that you get out of the way so other people can help solve the problems. But I don't know. Go ahead.
Just from a RICS hat point on in terms of GC, I think, and this is the same issue we had with sustainability and things like that 10, 15 years ago, which now seems to go in general. Putting things like this into the APC requirements, it makes it early doors, it puts different thought process into everyone's minds. As I say, I'm coming to it lately, and things that I hear in Sybil knocks me flat probably every week on something, a discussion I have with her, and she puts me in my place with something I just don't know and I wouldn't know. So I think from an RICS perspective, I think putting those things early into the culture of what we define as a chartered member or a professional surveyor, I think is a huge step, because 10, 15 years ago, things like that would just not been in an APC competence. They are now forming part of what is the requirement for a surveyor. So that's from an early perspective. I'm happy to.
From a macro level, I think Rick's, it was discussed in the panel group that I was in earlier today about career breaks. I think it was a brilliant suggestion that Rick's should, as part of being a regulated firm, insist on certain things like training in menopause. We know what it is. Like, I know it's tiny, but all these things, so that from a micro level, I think putting it so that the male member of staff looks at it from their perspective. So perhaps trying, if it's possible, it depends on your organisation, but saying to them, well, how does your wife manage the children, and sort of trying to get them to think about it, because I have 2 kids now, I'm pre-kids, I wouldn't have had an understanding of the concepts and how difficult it is when one of them's got a stomach bug at school, so they're not allowed to be there anymore, and how you just can't work. You've got to get them somehow, and the difficulties of that. So maybe trying to bring it to their level as well.
I agree with you. Like, it's the future, so get on or get out.
So tell your boss that.
I think the other point back to what can we do better, and I think this was an issue RSS had also with the Matrix, in terms of it was perceived as you're a young spotty graduate and that you're the only people that can attend a Matrix event. I think it's the same issue we have with some of the women's events. It's communication. I think the key point today of almost all of the panels is we've got to do better in communication, getting that message out to everyone. RSS, I think, has a duty and an obligation through our membership, with many, many thousands, to get that message spread. And today is one platform that hopefully can be done.
That education is key, because if you're a decision maker in an organization and you're not educating yourselves on these things, you're not going to be chasing the right solutions. Like you were saying, sometimes you just go after solutions without knowing the complete problem. And I think there is a concern with this zeroed in focus on the next generation, because anyone who knows how a gender pay gap and ethnicity pay gap are actually calculated, only focusing on your early career talent and not plugging all the other gaps all the way up through is going to make your gaps bigger. So you're actually creating a larger problem for yourself by not educating yourself on how all of this works. That the solution has to be on the retention, development, promotion pipeline as much as it is getting the early career talent in through the door. And it starts with the conversations and being keen and open to learning. So thank you, gentlemen, for being up here, for fighting through the nerves, leaning into the discomfort and having this chat with us today. So thank you. Closing remarks, I'm going to introduce Faye Allen to the stage. She's one of our fellows. I'll let her do her full introduction from there, and then we'll head off into the network.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Faye, as Sid was kindly said, I'm one of the few female fellows that we've got in the RICS, so if anyone wants to do this, please just give me a shout and I'll do my best to help you. I thought just to close, I've obviously listened to everything today, and what I found really interesting is really that there's more men in the room than we usually see, so thank you all for being here, because change doesn't happen without you. The reason that Sybil got me involved in this is because she knows I'm quite passionate about it, and I'm actually writing a book about women in construction. And it started originally around the problems we have and how we can fix them. And what I realised through the research and through speaking to over 300 women who answered my survey is that actually we need men to come along for the ride. So I love the last panel, all white males. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The fact of the matter is we do need to encourage men. There are a lot of women out there who I can understand get angry. Why should we educate them? Why should we do anything? But as you said, you don't know what you don't know. So I feel like it's our job to try and help everybody and work together. And we've had some brilliant ideas today. And again, Tony, that was just fantastic, absolutely brilliant. I think, just hearing the history of the first women in surveying from Carrie Silver, these women were pioneers of the RICS. There's so many people who are trying to make a difference, and it's really, really important that we recognise that and remember that history. But we also have to look at the younger generations. I've been in the industry now for 30 years, and I didn't have any role models. There were no women for me to look up to. And as much as I get uncomfortable being up here as well, I know it's really important that I am there for those women that are up and coming, so that they can see that actually you can stick it out for 30 years, even when it's hard, and trust me, it has been difficult. But the thing this year is investing in women, so for the second year I'm a delegate for the UK Women delegation, and for me, you won't see me doing this anywhere on LinkedIn, I'm sorry, because for me it is about investing in women. We need to have companies who are willing to put their money where their mouth is with DE&I. We recently set up our women's network, and I was absolutely banging the drum about getting them there. And we have more men there than women. So for me, that was it, really, really good. But so much more work needs to be done. So I think from my perspective, looking at everybody who's spoken today, I really want everyone to go home and just think, what can you do? Whether it's investing money, or investing time, or just having an ear to listen, that is what is needed to make change happen. And for any men who are just unsure what to do, ask the women around you what the problems are that they face. You know, it's been talk about menopause. I'm in perimenopause at the moment. There we go, brave moment. Everyone now knows, 48 this year. It's not easy. So yes, ask those questions. And women, don't be frightened to have those discussions. You know, we're all human. Men have issues as well. Listen to the men. They are fearful of what happens if they say something wrong. Let them know it's okay to say something wrong as long as you are actually invested in trying to get to the right step. So I want to say thanks to Sybil and everybody, really, and thank you for having me. Please link with me on LinkedIn, happy to have a chat more. And I will have a book out later this year because I've now got the deadline with the publisher. So yeah, look out for the crowdfunding campaign because that's going to be big. So yeah, thanks everyone, and I hope you have some real fun now networking and chatting with you.